Welcome to the Great Basin Prescribed Fire and Smoke Transport Briefing for Wednesday, November 6th. Over the last 1 to 2 weeks, we've really only seen precipitation over the northern and eastern side of the Great Basin, and much of this precipitation has still been near or below normal for the time of year. There have been a couple of pockets of above normal the last 2 weeks in southwest Idaho and down into central Utah. Over the last 72 hours, we have some new snowfall over central and eastern Idaho into Wyoming and down into the higher terrain of Utah, with a little bit of snow in the higher terrain of northeast Nevada. And you can see the snow depth there on the right. And looking at the snowpack, it is above normal for the time of year, even though there's minimal amounts in many areas. Looking at the satellite from this morning, we have a deep trough of low pressure near the Four Corners area. So still some wraparound moisture this morning in eastern Utah and parts of northeast Arizona with clouds and some light showers and colder temperatures. Otherwise, the ridge is building off the west coast and will influence the Great Basin for the next couple of days before the next cold front. So for later today, this low will slide slightly southeast, still again some wraparound moisture. Otherwise, some gusty north to northeast winds over the eastern half of Nevada into Utah and southeast Idaho, keeping dispersion higher. You can see those transport winds with the strongest winds, again, in that eastern half of Nevada into Utah and Arizona, where some gusts will be above 40 or 50 miles per hour in the higher elevations especially. Still some breezy winds in parts of the Sierra as well, with lighter winds up north. Otherwise, high mixing heights in most areas with the exception of the far north. Looking at temperatures, they'll be quite cool across the Great Basin with highs only in the 40s in many areas with the exception of the far south, and highs in the 30s or 20s in the higher elevations. Looking at the relative humidity, the only drier conditions are really in southern Nevada, so they will have some gusty north winds down there with RHs in the upper single digits or low teens. Otherwise, high RH with that moisture wrapping around the low will continue in Utah. On Thursday, the low only slides a little bit further south into southern Arizona and New Mexico, so that moisture will start to move a little bit further south and east out of the Great Basin with drier conditions overall. Still, those gusty north-northeast winds on the north side of that low will continue over parts of southern Nevada into Utah, again keeping dispersion higher. And you can see those wind gusts, not quite as strong as what we'll see today in Utah, but still gusts in the 30s, some gusts around 40 miles per hour in the higher elevations, and still higher mixing heights in the south. Temperatures will still remain cool over the eastern and northern side of the Great Basin under the influence of this low, but will start improving over parts of western Nevada as that ridge builds in. Otherwise, drier conditions over southern Nevada, so again, another round of gusty winds with those drier conditions. Even though fuel moistures have come up, this certainly is our drier side of the geographic area. On Friday, that low starts to move eastward, with still most of that wraparound moisture staying just outside of the Great Basin in Colorado and New Mexico. Otherwise, winds will start to taper off as that high pressure builds in, so we will see poor dispersion in many areas of the Great Basin. And you can see those winds really drop off on Friday. May still be a little gusty near the Colorado border, but for the most part, lighter winds and lower mixing heights. On Friday, we will still see those cool temperatures on the eastern side of the Great Basin, so highs still in the 40s across much of Utah, eastern Idaho, and Wyoming, and then continues to climb over western Nevada and southwest Idaho, where we'll see highs in the 50s and some areas above 60 degrees. Otherwise, relative humidity doesn't change too much with the driest conditions in the south, but we will see some drying occurring in Nevada. 3-day precipitation with this wraparound moisture, just very light showers, so not expecting any significant precipitation for southern or eastern Utah. Most of that will be to our east with dry conditions elsewhere. As we get into the weekend, we will see the next cold front approaching, so winds will start to pick up a little bit in far northwest Nevada, but much of the moisture remains in the Pacific Northwest and Northern California. By Sunday, the cold front will sweep across the Great Basin, so that will happen later on Saturday and through the day on Sunday. So we will see cooler temperatures again and some precipitation in the north. Otherwise, some gusty winds keeping dispersion a little bit higher in Nevada and parts of western Utah. And then the stronger cold front approaches on Monday, with more precipitation for the north and sweeps through Tuesday. So we will see that precipitation pushing further south into Nevada and Utah. Otherwise, good dispersion going into early next week with those gustier winds and that low moving east across the area. Looking at our precipitation, this is just taking us over the weekend from Saturday through Sunday night. You can see with that first cold front this weekend, Generally lighter amounts of precipitation and mostly in central Idaho and the higher elevations of Northern California. And then once the second cold front comes through early next week, this is certainly the stronger of the two cold fronts, so it will push precipitation further south, where most areas of the Great Basin will at least be getting some light precipitation, with some heavier precipitation in the mountains of the Sierra, and then of course up into Idaho, Wyoming, and down into northern Utah. Still, parts of southern Nevada and the Arizona Strip might not see any precipitation and just some cloud cover and cooler temperatures. Here's the 7-day total precipitation, taking everything into account. And then the 8 to 14-day outlook, taking us into the middle of November, still shows storms moving through with cooler temperatures and precipitation chances at least near or just above normal. That concludes our webcast for today. Check back on Friday for the latest updates.